It is coming closer and closer to our borders.
There is a real risk for a new armed conflict in Europe.
Can I put to you the words of the Ukraine ambassador this morning on Sky News, who said that many dead Russian bodies will be returned to Moscow if Putin moves against his country?
Tensions between Russia and the West are the worst they've been since the Cold War. At the end of last year, Vladimir Putin demanded sweeping guarantees that Ukraine would be kept out of NATO and it would roll back activities in Eastern European countries that have already joined. The demands were seen as completely unreasonable in the West, but Putin's threatened military action if they're not met.
Of course, we are moving troops. Troops are exercising, and it is no secret that they are preparing to deter any kind of threat.
With relations on a knife edge, meetings have been hastily called to seek compromise. Ukraine has been in a conflict with Russia since 2014, when Russia illegally annexed Crimea. But in the last few months, more than 100,000 Russian troops have amassed near the Ukrainian border. NATO's ruled out sending any of its allied forces to support the former Soviet country should Russia invade, but says it would bolster forces in alliance countries in the region if that happened.
Any use of force against Ukraine will be a severe and serious strategic mistake by Russia, and it will have severe consequences.
Now the Kremlin wants bulletproof guarantees that Ukraine won't become a NATO member.
We need ironclad, waterproof, bulletproof, legally binding guarantees never ever becoming member of NATO.
And that the alliance ends its security cooperation with Ukraine. The US and NATO have called these demands non-starters.
We will not slam the door shut on NATO's open door policy.
NATO wants to avoid a Russian invasion of Ukraine at all costs with some sort of compromise, but it can't be seen to be caving in to military pressure.
The West is prepared to talk about changes to military exercises in the region and the location of missiles.
Я думаю, що їм треба між собою порозумітися, а Україна, так би мовити, стоїть між ними, щоб як розмінна монета, може бути там.
Of course, this is about more than just Ukraine. Russia and the West have different ways of seeing the world.
You could have perhaps treated Russia as a potential ally and strengthened trust, but no, instead you tried to keep breaking us up.
Russia sees NATO as an aggressor, pushing into its former territories, having promised it wouldn't.
I've said this many times, and you probably know this well. Not a single inch to the east. NATO guaranteed us that in the 1990s. And you know what? They cheated us. 5 waves of NATO expansion. And there you go. They're now in Romania and Poland with weapons systems.
For NATO, this is about the principle of sovereignty. A sovereign country should be able to join any organisation of its choice. For Russia, it's more psychological. A country that's been repeatedly invaded from the West is deeply suspicious of NATO expanding towards its borders.
In the last few years, Russia has allegedly tried to influence elections.
Russians massively intervened in our elections.
Its military are involved in Ukraine, Crimea, Syria and now Kazakhstan. And its malign influence online, manipulating social media, for example, is felt all over the world. With all that in mind, it may seem unlikely that any deal, let alone friendship, could be struck between Western countries and Russia. Russia says it doesn't intend to invade Ukraine, but if Vladimir Putin's demands aren't met, there will be consequences for security across the whole of Europe. Time is running out to defuse that threat.